The synthetic flavor of the nutrient paste was supposed to mimic roast chicken, but to Adrian Locke, it tasted largely of disappointment and galvanized steel. He sat alone at a corner table in the mess hall of Eidolon Spire, the ambient hum of the station's life support systems providing a dull, rhythmic backdrop to his late dinner. It was 2300 hours standard station time. Most of the logistics crew had already rotated off shift, leaving Adrian with his flickering datapad and a meal that defied the laws of culinary physics. He scraped the bottom of the bowl with his spoon, the sound harsh in the empty room. He was tired. Not the kind of tired that a sleep cycle could fix, but a bone-deep weariness born of 3 years spent pushing paper to save lives that were reduced to statistics on a screen. He was just calculating whether he could afford the caloric intake of a second ration pack when the air pressure in the room seemed to drop. It wasn't a mechanical failure. It was a presence. The mess hall doors hissed open, but no chatter spilled in from the corridor. Instead, a silence marched in, wearing heavy boots. Adrian looked up his spoon, freezing halfway to his mouth. Standing in the doorway was Warden Sable Marr. The Royal Security Officer was an imposing figure, her armor, a matte black composite that seemed to drink the light, etched with the silver fang motifs of the wolf clans. She did not look like someone who visited the lower decks for the nutrient paste. Her eyes, sharp and predatory, scanned the room before locking onto Adrian with the precision of a targeting computer. She crossed the distance between them in 6 long strides. The few other crew members scattered at distant tables suddenly found their food fascinating, keeping their heads down. Sable stopped at his table. She did not sit. She loomed. "Adrian Locke," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried a texture like gravel grinding under a heavy wheel. Adrian swallowed the lump of paste that had been sitting in his throat. He set the spoon down, wiping his mouth with a paper napkin that felt like sandpaper. "Warden Marr, to what do I owe the pleasure did I fill out the kinetic shielding requisition form in the wrong font size again? Because I swear the regulations state—" "Stand up," Sable interrupted. She did not blink. Adrian hesitated, his heart kicking a rhythm against his ribs that was significantly faster than his calm exterior suggested. "Is this an arrest? Because if it is, I have the right to a union representative and a clear statement of charges." Sable leaned in, her gloved hands resting on the edge of the metal table. The metal groaned under the pressure. "The Queen is not happy." That was it. No charge code, no violation citation, just the terrifying ambiguity of royal displeasure. Adrian felt the blood drain from his face. "Queen Fenra." "Do we have another queen?" Sable asked, her tone flat. "Move." She stepped back, gesturing toward the door. It was not an invitation. It was a vector correction. Adrian stood up, his legs, feeling unsteadily light. He left his tray on the table. He had a feeling he would not be coming back to finish it. They walked in silence through the corridors of Eidolon Spire. Usually, a summons to the administrative levels meant a long wait in a sterile lift, followed by a sterile waiting room, followed by a sterile conversation with a sterile bureaucrat. But Sable did not lead him to the administration sector. She led him to the private turbo lifts, the ones guarded by biometric scanners and retinal locks that cost more than Adrian made in 10 years. As the lift shot upward, bypassing the residential decks, the command decks, and even the diplomatic suites, the gravity dampeners whined softly. They were going to the apex. The doors opened, and Adrian was assaulted by a sensation that did not belong on a space station. The smell of pine needles, crushed snow, and raw ozone. It was the scent of a winter storm contained within titanium walls. "This isn't the interrogation block," Adrian whispered, stepping out onto the plush carpet of the corridor. The walls here were lined with real wood, dark and polished, imported from worlds Adrian would never afford to visit. Sable said nothing. She walked him to a set of double doors that looked heavy enough to withstand a hull breach. She placed her palm against the sensor. The mechanism unlocked with the heavy thud of a deadbolt sliding home. "Go," she said. You are not coming in, Adrian asked, glancing back at her. She summoned you, not me. Sable's expression shifted, just for a fraction of a second, revealing something that looked suspiciously like pity. Good luck, soft skin. The doors swung inward. Adrian stepped inside and the door sealed shut behind him, cutting off his retreat. The room, if one could call it that, was a cavernous cabin that felt more like a hunting lodge than a starship interior. The lighting was low, cast by amber sconces that mimicked the flickering warmth of firelight. On the walls hung ancient hunting maps, not of planets, but of star systems and nebula currents, hand-drawn on stretched hide. Trophies of beasts Adrian could not name lined the shelved skulls with too many eye sockets, fangs the length of his forearm. But the dominant feature of the room was the window. The entire far wall was a single pane of reinforced transparent steel, looking out into the void. And there, hanging in the darkness like a celestial wound, was the Gloam Rift. From down in the lower decks, the rift was just a purple bruise on the sensors. Up here it was a living thing. Swirls of violet and bruised indigo churned in a slow, hypnotic dance. It pulsed with a bioluminescent sickness, a tear in the fabric of reality that led nowhere good. It was beautiful and terrifying, a reminder that the universe had teeth. Standing in front of that window, silhouetted against the dying light of the rift, was Queen Fenra Greymaw. She was taller than Adrian, her posture rigid. Even with her back turned, the power she radiated was palpable. She wore a long coat that mixed military structure with royal flowing lines, the collar lined with silver fur that matched the natural fur visible at the nape of her neck. Her tail, thick and expressive, twitched once, a sharp, agitated motion. "Come closer," she commanded. Her voice was low, a vibrato that Adrian felt in the soles of his boots. Adrian forced his legs to move. He walked until he was 3 paces from the large desk that separated them. The desk was a slab of obsidian cluttered with holographic emitters, and physical paper a luxury in itself. Fenra turned. Adrian had seen her on holovid broadcasts, of course. Everyone had. But seeing her in the flesh was a different biological experience. Her face was angular, possessing a fierce lupine beauty that transcended human aesthetics. Her eyes were gold vertically slit and currently burning with a cold fire. 2 distinct scars ran down her left cheek, interrupting the fine gray fur that covered her skin. She did not say hello. She did not ask his name. She reached out a clawed hand and slammed a data crystal onto the obsidian desk. The impact activated the projector. A 3-dimensional map flared to life between them. It was a visualization of the Echo Ledger, the quantum blockchain that tracked every gram of aid supplies moving through the sector. "Explain this," Fenra said. Adrian looked at the projection. It showed the supply route of the transport ship Void Strider. The official manifest, the one filed with Minister Calder Rusk's office, showed a direct line to Sector 4, the approved trade zone. But underneath that white line was a red one, the Ghost Trace, the quantum residue that the Echo Ledger captured, which no amount of hacking could erase. The red line veered sharply off course, detouring to the quarantine zone in Sector 9, a sector explicitly blacklisted by the Council due to political instability. It showed the offloading of 300 tons of medical isotopes and nutritional packs. Adrian felt his stomach drop. He stared at the red line. It was his signature, his encryption key. He had done it. Of course he had done it. The reports from Sector 9 had been horrific: children dying of radiation sickness, families boiling boot leather for soup. He had spent 3 nights rewriting the navigation subroutines to mask the drop, thinking he had been clever enough to fool the automated auditors. He had forgotten that the Wolf Queen watched the ledger herself. Adrian started, his voice cracking. He cleared his throat. "That is a visualization of a logistical discrepancy." "Do not lie to me, Adrian Locke," Fenra snarled. She leaned over the desk, her height overwhelming him. "The Echo Ledger records the intent of the navigator. It records the neural imprint of the command. That red line is not a glitch. It is a decision. Adrian looked up at her, realizing there was no point in denial. He was caught. The penalty for misappropriating council resources was severe. Prison, certainly. Labor camps, likely. Or given that this was the Wolf Queen, perhaps he would just be ejected out the airlock to join the debris circling the rift. His mind raced, looking for a loophole, a justification, a way to spin this. But the truth was simple. Yes, Adrian said, his voice quiet. It is. You diverted Class A medical supplies meant for the Trade Alliance, Fenra said, reciting the crime. You sent them to a settlement that has been declared a strategic non-entity by the High Council. You violated direct orders from Minister Rusk. You stole from the rich to feed the dead. They were not dead yet, Adrian said. The words slipped out before he could check them. That was the point. Fenra stared at him. The silence stretched tight as a bowstring. Then she slammed her fist onto the desk again. The heavy crystal glass of water sitting near the edge did not just shake. The water inside rippled in a perfect concentric circle, reacting to the subsonic frequency of her anger. You admit it, she roared. The sound was not a human shout. It carried a growl that triggered a primal flight response in Adrian's hindbrain. You stand there, an insignificant logistics coordinator, and you admit to defying the will of the council. Adrian flinched, stepping back. I had to. The reports the mortality rate in Sector 9 was climbing by 40% every week. The algorithm said to ignore them because they have no export value. You could not just what? Fenra cut him off, rounding the desk. She moved with terrifying speed, closing the distance until she towered over him. You could not do your job. Your job is to move boxes, Locke, not to play God. I was not playing God, Adrian snapped back, fear momentarily eclipsed by the same frustration that had made him change the coordinates in the first place. God does not care about shipping manifests. I was playing a human being who can read a casualty list. He braced himself for the blow. He expected claws. He expected the guards to rush in. But Fenra stopped. She stood barely a foot from him, her chest heaving with exertion. Her golden eyes searched his face, darting back and forth. The anger was there, radiating off her like heat. But as Adrian looked closer, he realized the quality of the anger was wrong. She was not looking at him like a criminal. She was looking at him like a problem she could not solve. The growl in her throat died down to a low rumble. She turned away from him, pacing toward the window, her tail lashing behind her. Do you know what Minister Rusk would do if he saw this? She asked, gesturing vaguely at the hologram without looking at it. He would not arrest you. He would have you erased. An accident in the docking bay, a malfunction in the air filtration of your quarters. I know, Adrian said. I knew the risks. You are an idiot, Fenra said, but the venom was gone from her voice. She stared out at the rift. A reckless, short-sighted idiot. Is that the official verdict? Adrian asked his legs, finally giving out enough that he had to lean against the back of a heavy wooden chair. Because, if you are going to throw me into the rift, could I please have 1 minute to swallow the last bite of my dinner? I think there is still some stuck in my molars. Fenra froze. She turned her head slowly, looking at him over her shoulder. Her expression was unreadable, a mix of incredulity and confusion. You are still thinking about food. It was synthetic chicken, Adrian said, his hands shaking slightly. It was terrible. I would hate to die with the taste of artificial flavoring as my final sensory experience. It seems undignified. Fenra stared at him for 3 long seconds. Then a strange sound escaped her. It was a short, sharp exhalation, a snort. You are absurd, she said. She turned fully back to him, crossing her arms over her chest. The motion made the metals on her coat chime softly. You stand before a queen having committed treason, and you make jokes about nutrient paste. Panic does strange things to the brain, Your Majesty, Adrian said. Fenra looked down at the floor, and for a moment the mask of the iron ruler slipped. She looked tired. Not the physical tiredness Adrian felt, but the exhaustion of someone holding up a collapsing ceiling. "I am not going to throw you in the rift," she said quietly, "although the thought is tempting." She walked back to the desk and waved a hand through the hologram. The red line vanished, replaced by the white official lie. "Minister Rusk suspects," she said. "He knows supplies are bleeding out of the system, but he cannot prove how. The echo ledger is absolute. He thinks it is a corruption in the code. He does not suspect a human factor, because he does not believe humans are capable of risking their careers for strangers." She looked at Adrian. "He underestimates the stupidity of a conscience." "So I am free to go?" Adrian asked, hope blooming cautiously in his chest. "No," Fenra said sharply. "You are absolutely not free." She tapped a command into the desk. "Tomorrow morning at 0800 hours, the station council convenes. All delegates from the 7 systems will be there. Minister Rusk will be presenting his new proposal for conditional aid optimization." And Adrian asked, dread creeping back in. "And you will be there," Fenra said. "You will not be in the audience. You will be at the podium." "What?" Adrian choked out. "Me, I am a level 4 coordinator. I do not have clearance to speak at a council session. I do not even have clearance to use the executive bathroom." "You do now," Fenra said. "You are going to stand there in front of Rusk, in front of the cameras, in front of the entire galaxy. And you are going to explain why the logistics system needs adjustment." "They will eat me alive," Adrian said, horrified. "Rusk will tear me apart with 3 subclauses and a precedent from 100 years ago." "Let him try," Fenra said. Her eyes flashed, and a hint of a smile, sharp and dangerous, touched her lips. "I am not sending you there to apologize, Adrian. I am sending you there to be visible." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a metal object. It looked like a choker, sleek and silver, pulsating with a faint blue light. "Step forward," she commanded. Adrian hesitated, then obeyed. Fenra moved around the desk. She reached up. He was tall, but she was taller, and placed the metal band around his neck. It clicked shut with a magnetic snap. It sat flush against his skin, cool and light. "What is this?" Adrian asked, touching the metal. "A scent collar," Fenra said. She stepped back, admiring her work. "In my culture, it marks a member of the pack who is under specific protection. It contains a biometric tracker and a shield generator capable of deflecting a low-velocity plasma bolt." "You are tagging me?" Adrian asked, feeling a mix of humiliation and relief. "I am claiming you," Fenra corrected. "As of this moment, you are considered royal property for the duration of the investigation. If Rusk or his agents try to touch you, this collar will alert my personal guard before they can even draw a weapon. It also broadcasts a pheromone signal that tells any wolf on this station that you are off limits." She leaned in close again, her scent clean snow and danger filling his nose. "Do not mistake this for a gift, Adrian Locke. It is a leash. You belong to the problem now, and until we solve it, you belong to me." Adrian struggled for words. The collar felt heavy, not with weight, but with implication. "I understand." "Good," Fenra said. She turned back to the window, dismissing him. "Get out. Prepare your speech. And for the sake of the stars, brush your teeth. You smell of synthetic chicken." The walk back to his quarters was a blur. The corridors of the lower decks felt different now. The ambient noise of the station seemed louder, more chaotic. Every time he passed a crew member, he felt the cool metal of the collar against his throat. He saw people glance at it, their eyes widening, then quickly looking away. A scent collar. He was walking around with the Queen's mark on him. It was a shield, yes, but it was also a target. He felt safe and yet completely exposed. He reached his quarters, a small utilitarian box that consisted of a bunk, a sanitation unit, and a desk. The door slid shut behind him, locking automatically. Adrian collapsed onto the edge of his bunk. He ran his fingers over the collar. There was no seam, no release mechanism. He sighed and turned to his personal terminal. He needed to research the council protocols for tomorrow. He needed to know exactly how Rusk was going to try to destroy him. He activated the screen. "Logan," he muttered. The screen flickered. Instead of his usual desktop, a messy array of supply charts and logistical maps, a black window popped up. Access log. Unauthorized entry detected. Adrian frowned. He sat up straighter. System display log details. Text scrolled across the screen. Someone had been in his files. Not just his work files. Everyone looked at those, but his personal archive. File accessed. Lock. Childhood Orphanage. Records. NC. File accessed. Psychological profile. Year 2022. Doc file accessed. Incident. Report. Delta. Station. Intervention. Vid Adrian felt a cold shiver run down his spine that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. Someone had gone through everything. They had looked at the records of the orphanage on the mining colony where he grew up. They had watched the videos of the times he had gotten in trouble for unauthorized assistance. They had read the psychological evaluations that described him as prone to excessive empathy and lacking the necessary detachment for command. It wasn't a hack for profit. It was a biography. Someone was building a profile. They were reading him like a book, learning his triggers, his weaknesses, his history. Was it Rusk, or was it Fenra checking to see if her new pet was housebroken? Before he could process the paranoia, a chime sounded from his terminal. A priority message. He hesitated. It was late. Nothing good came after midnight. He opened it. The sender ID was encrypted, but the signature at the bottom was plain text, Dr. Imani Kerr. Adrian blinked. Dr. Kerr was the lead xenophysicist studying the Gloam Rift. She was a legend, a recluse who lived in the observation blisters near the rift's edge. Why was she messaging a logistics coordinator? The message was short. No pleasantries, no salutations. Locke, I saw the ledger. I saw the red line. You think you just moved boxes. You are wrong. I have been monitoring the rift's wave particle fluctuations for 20 years. Tonight, at the exact moment your illegal shipment crossed the event horizon of Sector 9, the rift changed. The background radiation dropped by 0.5%. The turbulence smoothed out. The rift is not just a spatial anomaly, Adrian. It is a mirror. It does not just consume matter. It tastes intent. It liked what you did. Watch your back tomorrow. Rusk knows this too. He isn't protecting the supplies. He is protecting the chaos. Adrian stared at the screen, the words burning into his retinas. The Gloam Rift reacted to a moral choice. He looked toward the small porthole in his room. He couldn't see the rift from here, only the endless starfield. But he could feel it. The collar around his neck seemed to hum, vibrating in sympathy with something vast and ancient out there in the dark. He had thought he was just fighting a corrupt bureaucrat. He realized now, with a sinking sensation, that he had stepped into a war between physics and philosophy, and he had to give a speech about it in 8 hours. Adrian groaned, falling back onto his pillow. I should have just eaten the chicken. The grand conclave chamber of Eidolon Spire was not designed for comfort. It was designed for intimidation. It was a vast spherical auditorium located at the very apex of the station, a marvel of transparent aluminum and suspended gravity platforms. From the center, where the accused stood, one could look up and see the unfiltered stare of the galaxy, or look down and see the swirling, bruised purple mists of the Gloam Rift churning miles below. The architecture forced a sense of vertigo upon anyone unfortunate enough to be called to the floor, a physical reminder of how small one life was against the infinite dark. Adrian Locke stood on the central podium, a raised disk of white marble that felt perilously like a serving platter. He was surrounded. The tiered seating that lined the sphere's walls was packed to capacity, with delegates from the 7 major systems of the Alliance. There were the silica lords of Kale, their crystalline bodies chiming softly as they shifted. There were the buoyant, gas-breathing ambassadors from the Jovian float, encased in their brass pressure suits. And occupying the highest tier of honor, sat the Wolf Guard, the elite soldiers of Queen Fenra, their armor dark as void steel. The noise was deafening. 1,000 conversations in 100 languages buzzed through the air, filtered and flattened by the universal translators into a headache-inducing drone. Adrian adjusted the collar of his standard-issue logistics uniform. It felt tight, but not as tight as the silver scent collar that rested flush against his skin. He could feel the eyes of the assembly lingering on that metal band. To the humans present, it looked like jewelry. To the aliens specifically, the wolves, it screamed a message that made them bare their teeth in confusion. Protected. Claimed. Do not touch. Envoy Rowan Hale, the representative for humanity, sat in the front row. He looked like he had swallowed a lemon whole and was trying to smile through the acidity. He kept shooting Adrian warning glances, miming a zipper motion across his lips. The drone of the crowd died instantly as a gavel of pure light struck the sound-dampening field. Minister Calder Rusk stepped onto the floating platform opposite Adrian. Rusk was a man who looked like he had been ironed. His suit was impeccable. His hair was graying at the temples with distinguished precision, and his eyes were cold, calculating instruments. He did not look at Adrian. He looked at the council. Distinguished delegates, Rusk began, his voice amplified to fill the sphere, without a hint of distortion. We are gathered here to address a rupture. Not a rupture in the hull which can be patched with sealant, but a rupture in trust which requires a far more delicate repair. He gestured, and a massive hologram materialized in the air between them. It was a chart complex and jagged, showing resource allocation across the sector. The Gloam Rift has made logistics a nightmare. Rusk continued, his tone smooth and reasonable. Supplies rot, medicine degrades. We have limited resources to support an unlimited amount of need. Therefore, the Council approved the Conditional Aid Optimization Protocol. It is a harsh math, yes, but it is necessary math. We save those who can be saved. We invest in sectors that stabilize the Alliance. We do not throw precious isotopes into black holes of instability. Rusk turned slowly, finally fixing his gaze on Adrian. But last night, a Level 4 logistics coordinator decided that his personal feelings were superior to the collective wisdom of this council. Adrian Locke hacked the navigation subroutines. He diverted a shipment worth 5 million credits to a sector that has been designated as non-viable. A murmur of disapproval rippled through the crowd. The Silica Lords chimed in dissonance. Chaos, Rusk said, leaning on the word. That is what this man brings. If every employee decides where the ships go, based on their own bleeding heart, the entire supply chain collapses in 3 days. We will have anarchy. We will have starvation. We must maintain order. It was a good speech. It was logical. It was terrifyingly sensible. Adrian felt his hands sweating. He looked at Rusk and saw the terrifying certainty of a man who believed that compassion was a variable that could be optimized out of the equation. Then, the heavy thud of boots silenced the murmurs. Queen Fenra Greymaw stood up from her throne on the wolf tier. She did not use a microphone. She did not need one. She projected her voice with the diaphragm control of a predator, announcing its territory. Order, Fenra said, tasting the word like it was spoiled meat. Minister Rusk speaks of order, as if it is a god we must sacrifice our children to. She walked down the steps of her tier, her long coat trailing behind her, the metals on her chest catching the light of the nebula outside. She moved with a liquid grace that made the human delegates flinch back as she passed. She stepped onto Adrian's platform. The proximity of her was overwhelming. The smell of ozone and pine filled Adrian's senses. She stood beside him, not facing him, but facing the council. I am angry, Fenra announced. The room held its breath. I summoned this human to my cabin last night because I intended to tear him apart. Fenra continued, her voice low and dangerous. I saw the theft. I saw the breach of protocol. I was ready to execute a traitor. Rowan Hale closed his eyes, looking like he was praying for a sudden depressurization event to end his misery. But then, Fenra said, her voice rising, I asked myself why. Why would a man with a clean record, a man who has never been late to a shift in 3 years, risk his life and his freedom for strangers he will never meet? She turned to Adrian. Her golden eyes bored into him. Tell them, Adrian. Did you sell the supplies? Did you take a bribe? Adrian cleared his throat. He felt the vibration of the scent collar against his throat, a subtle hum that anchored him. No. Then why? Rusk interjected from his platform, his voice sharp. Why break the law? Adrian looked at Rusk. He thought of the images from Sector 9. The children with skin like parchment. The silence of the wards where there was no medicine left to dull the pain. Because the ledger was read, Adrian said. His voice was shaky at first, but it steadied. I was processing the weekly mortality reports. The system your system minister marked Sector 9 as loss acceptable, because their output had dropped below 12%. But I looked at the names. There were 3,000 names on that list. And I realized that I could not just hit the delete key and go eat my dinner. He looked up at the tiers of aliens and humans. I did not do it to be a hero, Adrian said honestly. I did it because I could not sleep. I could not stand the idea that someone would die just because a spreadsheet column was too narrow to fit them in. There was a silence. It wasn't the silence of agreement, but the silence of discomfort. Adrian had broken the cardinal rule of politics. He had made the abstract suffering real. Rowan Hale stood up quickly, smoothing his suit. What Mr. Locke means to say, the envoy stammered, offering a practiced oily smile to the council, is that he experienced a momentary lapse in judgment due to stress. We can assure the minister that this was a singular emotional error, not a political statement. We are all committed to the stability of the alliance. Sometimes the hard choices are the most compassionate ones in the long run. Adrian looked at Hale. He felt a flash of irritation that burned hotter than his fear. You talk like you are wrapping hunger in gift paper, Adrian said into the silence. Rowan Hale froze his mouth half open. Excuse me. You are using very pretty words, Adrian said, stepping forward to the edge of the podium. Stabilization, optimization, viability. You wrap them up nicely so you do not have to look at what is inside the box. But inside the box, Envoy is a child starving to death while we debate the price of grain. A sound cut through the tension. It was a short, sharp bark. The council turned. Queen Fenra was smiling. It was not a nice smile. It was a smile full of teeth, the kind a wolf gives before the hunt begins. Her tail gave a single, amused flick. Wrapping hunger in gift paper, Fenra repeated, looking at Hale with undisguised contempt. I like that. It is accurate. She turned back to Rusk. You say this man is a chaos agent, Minister. I say he is the only one in this room who is actually doing his job. The purpose of the Relief Corps is to provide relief, not to provide excuses. The law is clear, Rusk snapped, losing his cool demeanor for the first time. We cannot function without rules, Your Majesty. If we allow individual discretion, we invite corruption. Then the rules are the corruption, Fenra roared, her voice echoing off the glass ceiling. She stalked the perimeter of the podium. I swore an oath to the Alliance, a wolf's oath, to protect the weak, to guard the pack. For 10 years you have handed me papers to sign that redefine the weak, until the definition is so small it fits in your pocket. You have made me a complicit partner in your optimization. She stopped next to Adrian and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. The claws rested gently on the fabric of his uniform. I am done with it, Fenra looked up at the highest tier, addressing the entire galaxy. I am invoking the royal prerogative of the Greymaw line. As of this moment, Adrian Locke is no longer a Level 4 coordinator. Rusk narrowed his eyes. You cannot promote a criminal, Fenra. I can do whatever I please within my own jurisdiction, she countered. I am appointing Adrian Locke as the royal relief arbiter. A gasp went through the room. Even the gas breathers bobbed in agitation. There is no such position, Rusk said, his face reddening. There is now, Fenra declared. The arbiter will answer only to me. He will have the authority to review every single conditional aid restriction in the Echo Ledger. If he finds that a restriction is based on politics, rather than genuine scarcity, he has the power to override it. He has the power to uncheck the box. She looked down at Adrian. Do you accept this burden, Adrian Locke? Adrian stared at her. This was madness. She was handing him a loaded weapon and pointing him at the most powerful bureaucrat in the sector. She was making him a target for every assassin, political rival, and corporate lobbyist in the galaxy. He looked at Rusk. Rusk looked like he wanted to murder Adrian with his bare hands. He looked at Hale. Hale looked like he was about to faint. Then he looked at the hologram of the rift swirling beneath his feet. He thought about the red line he had drawn the night before. He thought about the feeling of doing something real. Adrian started. He took a breath. If I accept, does that mean I get access to the real coffee in the executive lounge? Fenra's eyes danced. We can negotiate the coffee. Then I accept, Adrian said firmly. This is an outrage, Rusk shouted, slamming his hand on his podium. This creates a dual chain of command. It is a precedent for anarchy. You are giving a logistician the power to veto the council. I am giving a human being the power to be human, Fenra shot back. If the law requires good people to become criminals to save lives, then the law needs to be torn up and used for kindling. She turned to her wolf guard. Warden Marr. Sable Marr leaped from the upper-tier landing on the podium with a heavy metallic thud that cracked the marble floor. She straightened up, towering over Adrian. Escort the arbiter to his new quarters, Fenra commanded. If anyone obstructs his path, be it a clerk or a minister, you are authorized to remove the obstruction. Physically. Sable saluted, slamming her fist against her chest plate. Understood, my queen. Fenra looked at Rusk one last time. Session adjourned. The corridor outside the Grand Conclave was long, wide, and thankfully empty, save for the retreating backs of terrified aides. Adrian walked quickly, trying to keep up with Warden Sable's long strides. His heart was still hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He felt lightheaded. He had just declared war on the administration. Slow down, Adrian panted. My legs are not hydraulically assisted. Sable stopped abruptly. She turned to face him. Up close, her black armor was covered in scratches and dense scars of battle that she had not bothered to polish out. She leaned down, sniffing the air near his neck. You smell of fear, Sable stated, and synthetic sweat. It is a pungent combination. I just stood in front of 300 delegates and told Minister Rusk he was morally bankrupt, Adrian snapped, adjusting his collar. I think I am allowed to sweat. You did well, Sable said, and the praise was so unexpected that Adrian blinked. For a soft skin. Soft skin? Adrian raised an eyebrow. You have no fur, no armor. Your bones are brittle. You break easily. Sable listed his biological flaws with clinical detachment. But you have sharp teeth. I do not, Adrian argued. I have standard human dentition. Actually, I need a filling in my lower left molar. Metaphorical teeth, you idiot, Sable growled, though there was no heat in it. You bit back. Rusk expected you to roll over and show your belly. Instead, you snapped at his hand. Wolves respect that. She started walking again, slower this time. Do not get used to it. The council floor is safe compared to what comes next. Rusk will not challenge you in public again. He will try to bury you in paperwork, or he will find a way to make your decisions backfire. He will make you fail, and then he will point and say, I told you so. I know, Adrian said quietly. I am not a politician. I am just a guy who fills out forms." "You are not just filling out forms anymore," Sable said, her voice dropping an octave. "You are drawing battle lines, and you are standing on the side of the Queen. Do not make her regret it. If you hurt her, if you use this power for yourself, or if you sell her out to Hale, I will not wait for orders. I will open the airlock myself." "Understood," Adrian said. He looked at the massive pistol strapped to her thigh. "Your conflict resolution style is very direct." "It saves time," Sable shrugged. They reached a set of large double doors at the end of the executive wing. Sable stopped. "She is waiting for you inside," Sable said, nodding at the door. "Go. I will stand guard. If Rusk sends a drone, I will shoot it." "Thank you, Sable," Adrian said. "Do not call me Sable," she grunted. "To you, I am Warden Marr, or the one who can snap your spine." "Warden Marr it is," Adrian said, managing a weak smile. He pushed the doors open. This was not the hunting cabin from the night before. This was a private observation deck, a small bubble of glass protruding from the side of the station. The view of the Gloam Rift here was all-consuming. The purple light washed over everything, turning the room into a twilight dreamscape. Fenra was standing by the railing, staring into the abyss. She had removed her heavy coat, revealing a simpler tunic underneath. She looked smaller, without the armor of her office, less like a monument, and more like a living thing. "You survived," she said without turning around. "Barely," Adrian replied, walking to stand beside her. "I think I might have given Envoy Hale a stroke." "Hale will recover. He has the constitution of a cockroach," Fenra said. She turned to look at him. The amber light of her eyes was softer now. "Why did you really do it, Adrian?" "I told you," Adrian said. "The ledger." "No," Fenra interrupted. "I heard the speech, but speeches are for crowds. I am asking you. You are a small man in a big station. You could have kept your head down. You could have lived a safe, quiet life. Why risk the fire?" Adrian looked out at the rift. The swirling colors reminded him of oil on water. "Because I was scared," he admitted softly. Fenra tilted her head, her ears twitching. "Scared of Rusk?" "No," Adrian said. "I was scared of myself. I have been here 3 years. The first year I cried when I saw the rejection lists. The second year I felt sick. The third year I just felt tired." He gripped the railing. "I caught myself looking at a death toll of 500 people and thinking, well, at least the paperwork is filed correctly. That was the moment I got scared. I was afraid of becoming someone who gets used to the wrong thing. I was afraid that if I did not do something drastic, I would just fade. I would become just another gear in the machine that grinds people up." He looked at her. "I did not want to be a gear. I wanted to be a wrench." Fenra stared at him for a long time. The silence between them was heavy, but it wasn't oppressive. It was the silence of recognition. "I know that fear," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I sit on a throne made of ancient bones. I wear a crown that weighs 5 kilograms. Every day my advisors tell me that compromise is the price of peace. They tell me to ignore the hunger in the outer rim because we need the trade routes open. And every day, I feel a little more of my soul turn into stone." She reached out her hand, hovering near his arm, before she pulled it back. "You are a strange creature, Adrian Locke," she said. "You look fragile, but you have a spine made of something stronger than steel." "Titanium alloy," Adrian suggested with a nervous chuckle. "Hope," Fenra corrected him. "A very dangerous material." She turned away from the window and walked toward a console in the center of the room. It was an access terminal for the Echo Ledger, but unlike the standard ones, this one was crystalline, glowing with a soft, internal light. "Come here," she said. "If you are to be my arbiter, you need to see the truth of what we are dealing with. The rift is not just a storm." Adrian approached the console. "Dr. Kerr sent me a message. She said the rift reacts to intent." "Dr. Kerr is a wise woman," Fenra said. "Watch." She placed her hand on the crystalline surface. Her claws clicked against the glass. Instantly, the projection of the echo ledger sprang to life. But it wasn't the clean grid of numbers and lines Adrian was used to. As Fenra's hand connected with the system, the data stream warped. The numbers dissolved. In their place, a waveform appeared, jagged, wild, and chaotic. It pulsed in time with Fenra's breathing. And then, a sound filled the room. It wasn't audio. It was a psychic resonance that vibrated in the base of Adrian's skull. It sounded like a howl. A lonely, mournful, infinite howl that echoed from the bottom of a deep well. On the screen, a new layer of data manifested. It was a signature Adrian had never seen in any manual. It was tagged in a language that wasn't standard Alliance Basic. It looked like ancient runic script, burning in a bright, violent crimson. System. Alert howl. Signature detected. Source, biometric match. Fenra. Greymaw resonance. 98%. What is that? Adrian whispered, stepping closer. That is not standard code. I do not know, Fenra admitted, her voice trembling slightly. It only appears when I touch the ledger. It started 6 months ago. The engineers cannot see it. Rusk cannot see it. Only I can. And now me, Adrian said, realizing the implication. I can see it. Fenra looked at him, her eyes wide. You can see the red script. Yes, Adrian said. It says Howl signature. Fenra pulled her hand back, as if the console had burned her. The projection vanished instantly, returning to the mundane blue grid of the supply chain. That is impossible, she breathed. The sages told me it was a hallucination, a ghost in my blood. She looked at Adrian with a new intensity. It wasn't the look of a queen to a subject, or even a predator to prey. It was the look of someone who had been alone in a dark room for a very long time, finally seeing another face in the shadows. Why can you see it? She asked. I do not know, Adrian said, touching the scent collar at his throat. He felt a strange warmth radiating from it, syncing with the fading echo of the howl in his head. Maybe because I am wearing your collar. Maybe it links us. No, Fenra shook her head. The collar is technology. This is something older. She stepped closer to him, invading his personal space again. But this time, there was no threat. She leaned down, her face inches from his. He could see the flecks of amber in her golden irises. He could feel the warmth of her breath. You are not just an arbiter, Adrian, she whispered. You are a key. And I think you are the one I have been waiting for. Adrian swallowed hard. He wanted to make a joke. He wanted to ask if this came with a pay raise. But the words died in his throat. The gravity of the moment pinned him down. What do we do now? He asked. Fenra looked back at the darkening rift. Now, she said, we stop asking for permission. We are going to find out what is screaming in the dark. And God help anyone who tries to stand in our way. The office of the Royal Relief Arbiter was not an office. It was a converted storage bay on Deck 12, smelling faintly of hydraulic fluid and lemon-scented cleaning agents. Adrian Locke sat behind a desk that he had salvaged from a surplus depot, surrounded by towers of holographic data slates that shimmered in the low light. He had been the Arbiter for 72 hours. He had slept for perhaps 4 of them. Adrian rubbed his eyes, which felt as though they had been scrubbed with sand. He picked up the nearest slate, his fingers trembling slightly from an overdose of caffeine and moral outrage. He was not looking at supply manifests anymore. He was looking at a crime scene masked as a spreadsheet. The document in front of him was titled Route Optimization Protocol 88 Beta. It sounded harmless. It sounded efficient. But when Adrian peeled back the layers of bureaucratic jargon, he found the teeth. The protocol dictated that any settlement requesting aid must demonstrate a future economic viability score of at least 40%. If a colony was too sick to work, its score dropped. If its score dropped, the aid was rerouted to a high-potential zone. It was a death spiral codified in law. A colony starving because it was too weak to mine the ore that paid for the food that would give them the strength to mine. Adrian highlighted the clause. He tapped the command to overwrite it. Access denied. He frowned. He tapped it again. Authorization overridden by Central Command. Reason security risk. Security risk, Adrian muttered to the empty room. Starving farmers are a security risk. He tried another file. A shipment of water filtration units bound for the dust moons of Sigma. Blocked. Reason docking bay maintenance at recipient coordinate. He checked the live satellite feed of Sigma. The docking bays were empty and fully operational. Minister Calder Rusk was not fighting him in the open anymore. Rusk had retreated into the machinery of the station. He was jamming the gears. Every time Adrian tried to push a shipment through a new error, message appeared. A sudden inspection, a missing permit, a mysterious engine failure. The door to his storage bay office hissed open. Warden Sable Marr stepped in. She had to duck slightly to clear the frame. Her black armor was covered in a fine layer of condensation, suggesting she had just come from the environmental decks. "You look like a corpse that has not yet been informed of its own death," Sable said, by way of greeting. "Good morning to you too, Warden," Adrian replied, leaning back in his creaky chair. "Is there coffee or just more threats?" "The Queen is waiting," Sable said, ignoring the question. "Pack your bag." Adrian blinked. "Pack, I have a meeting with the Sanitation Guild at 10 o'clock. If I do not convince them to release the bio-waste recyclers, Sector 7 drowns in sewage by Tuesday." "The meeting is cancelled," Sable said. She walked over to the desk and tapped the shutdown command on Adrian's terminal. The holographic towers vanished. "We are leaving." "Leaving the office." "Leaving the station," Sable corrected. Hangar Bay 1 was usually reserved for dreadnoughts and diplomatic envoys. Today, it housed the Moonfang. It was a frigate of wolf design, sleek and predatory, with a hull made of matte black composite that seemed to absorb the radar waves of the station. It did not look like a relief ship. It looked like a missile with engines. Containers were being loaded into its belly by automated drones, but the activity was strangely silent. There was no shouting, no chaotic bustle. The Wolf Guard moved with synchronized precision, their movements fluid and deadly. Adrian stood at the base of the boarding ramp, clutching a canvas duffel bag that contained 2 changes of clothes and his toothbrush. He felt woefully underprepared. "What is happening?" Adrian asked as Sable shoved him gently forward. "Where are we going?" "We are going to verify the security risks ourselves," a voice said from the top of the ramp. Queen Fenra Greymaw stood there. She was not wearing her ceremonial robes. She was dressed in functional void armor leather and weave mesh that hugged her tall frame, allowing for maximum mobility. A heavy pulse rifle was strapped across her back, and her hair was tied back in a severe braid. "Minister Rusk claims that the satellite stations are refusing our aid ships due to pirate activity and navigation hazards," Fenra said, as Adrian walked up the ramp to join her. "He says it is unsafe for standard transport." "It is a lie," Adrian said, breathless from the climb. "I checked the sensors. The lanes are clear." "I know it is a lie," Fenra said, her golden eyes flashing. "But I cannot prove it from the throne room. If the system refuses to move the cargo, then the Queen will move it herself." She turned and gestured to the open airlock. "Welcome aboard the Moonfang Arbiter. We are running the blockade." Adrian stopped. "We, you mean you and me." "You are the one who unblocks the ledger," Fenra said. "I am just the delivery service. Get inside. We launch in 5 minutes." As Adrian stepped into the ship, a shadow detached itself from the gloom of the hangar walls. It was Dr. Imani Kerr. The xenophysicist looked smaller than usual, wrapped in a heavy thermal shawl, her face lined with exhaustion. "Wait," Dr. Imani called out. Fenra paused her hand on the airlock controls. "Doctor, you should be in your lab." "And you should be on your throne, not playing cargo hauler," Dr. Imani snapped, walking up the ramp with surprising speed. She stopped in front of them, holding up a data pad. I cannot stop you. I know better than to try and stop a gray maw when her blood is up. But you need to know what you are flying into. We are flying into a political blockade, Fenra said dismissively. You are flying into the rift, Dr. Imani corrected. To bypass the satellite stations, you have plotted a trajectory that skims the event horizon of the Gloam Rift. The Moonfang uses a scent field generator for shielding, correct? It is standard wolf technology, Sable said, stepping up behind Adrian. It masks our biological signature from the void fauna. The rift is not void fauna, Dr. Imani said, her voice dropping to a whisper. My sensors are picking up resonance spikes. The scent field interacts with the rift. It is like pouring blood into shark-infested water. If you harmonize the field incorrectly, the rift will not just damage the ship. It will try to eat it. She looked directly at Adrian. And you, she said. The howl signature you saw. It is active. It is waiting. Do not listen to it, Locke. Whatever it offers you, whatever it promises, it is not human. What does it promise? Adrian asked, feeling a cold prickle on the back of his neck. Finality, Dr. Imani said enigmatically. She stepped back. I have uploaded a frequency modulator to your navigation computer. It might dampen the resonance. Good luck. With that, she turned and marched back down the ramp. Fenra watched her go, her expression unreadable. Then she hit the seal button. The airlock hissed shut, locking them in. She is paranoid, Fenra said, though she did not sound convinced. To the bridge. The bridge of the Moonfang was a study in contrasts. The technology was advanced holographic interfaces, neural link pilot chairs, but the aesthetic was primal. The air smelled of ozone and crushed pine needles, the ambient scent of the wolf crew. There were no chairs for the crew. They stood or crouched at their stations. Only the captain's chair, or in this case the Queen's, was a seat carved from a dark, dense wood. Adrian was given a jump seat near the communication station. He felt like a child, sitting at the adults' table. Engage scent field, Fenra commanded. Field active, the helmsman, a scarred wolf named Kale, reported. Masking signature. We are invisible to scanners. Take us out, Fenra ordered. Set course for the Azure colony. Through the traverse. The ship shuddered as the docking clamps released. Then, with a surge of acceleration that pressed Adrian deep into his seat, they shot out of the station and into the void. The journey was long. To avoid Rusk's security blockades, they had to take the scenic route, a winding path through the debris fields that bordered the Gloam Rift. Hours turned into shifts. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Outside the viewports, the rift churned a wall of violent violet clouds that seemed to reach out for the ship. During a quiet period, Adrian found himself standing near the viewport, staring at the swirling colors. It bothers you, a voice said. Adrian jumped. Fenra was standing next to him. She moved so silently for someone so tall. It looks like a bruise on the universe, Adrian said. Dr. Imani said it interacts with the field. Can you feel it? I feel everything, Fenra said quietly. She tapped the side of her nose. You rely on your eyes, Adrian. You trust what you see. But eyes can be tricked. Light can be bent. Holograms can mask the truth. She inhaled deeply, closing her eyes. The nose never lies. Fear has a scent. It smells like copper and sour milk. Betrayal smells like rot disguised as perfume. Hope smells like rain on dry earth. She opened her eyes and looked at him. What do I smell like? Adrian asked before he could stop himself. He immediately regretted it. Wait, do not answer that. I probably smell like instant coffee and panic. Fenra laughed. It was a genuine sound, low and throaty. You smell like old paper and electricity, and something else, something warm, like bread baking. Bread, Adrian raised an eyebrow. That is domestic. It is safe, Fenra said. Wolves value safety. We hunt, we fight, we kill. But at the end of the day, we want to come back to a den that smells like safety. She leaned against the reinforced glass. Teach me, she said suddenly. Teach you what? Your language, Fenra said. Not the words. I speak your language perfectly. Teach me the deflection. The way you make a joke when you are terrified. The way you wrapped insults in polite conversation with Envoy Hale. Adrian smiled. Ah, you mean sarcasm. It is a survival mechanism. When the universe is huge and scary and ridiculous, you have two choices: you scream or you laugh. Screaming makes your throat hurt. Laughing confuses the enemy. Show me, Fenra challenged. Insult me, but make it sound like a compliment. Adrian thought for a moment. He looked at her, the predator, the monarch, the woman who could crush his skull with one hand, but was currently asking for a lesson in humor. Your Majesty, Adrian said with a bow. Your terrifying competence is extremely inconvenient for my desire to have a panic attack in peace. Fenra blinked. Her tail twitched. Then the corners of her mouth curled up. I see, she said. You acknowledge my power, but you frame it as a nuisance to your own weakness. It disarms the aggression. Exactly, Adrian said. If I am already making fun of myself, you cannot hurt me. I have stolen your weapon. Fenra looked at him with a strange intensity. You are smarter than you look, Adrian Locke. That is a low bar, Adrian quipped. From the shadow of the weapons console, Warden Sable watched them. Her eyes were narrowed. Her hand rested unconsciously on the hilt of her blade. She saw the way the Queen's shoulders relaxed. She saw the way Adrian stood, not cowering, but standing equal. It terrified her. A queen who relaxed was a queen who dropped her guard. And in the Game of Thrones, a dropped guard was a death sentence. The ship's mess hall was small and utilitarian. Adrian sat with a tray of military rations, which were a significant upgrade from the station's paste. He was halfway through a protein bar when he noticed a young wolf cadet staring at him from the next table. The boy, he couldn't have been more than 18 in human years, was eyeing Adrian's fruit packet. Adrian picked up the packet. I am allergic to synthetic peaches, he lied loudly. Does anyone want this? The cadet's ears perked up. He looked at his superior officer for permission. The officer nodded. The boy snatched the packet with a muttered thanks and devoured it. Adrian smiled and went back to his data slate. He did not notice Fenra standing in the doorway. She had seen the exchange. She walked over and sat opposite him. You are not allergic to peaches, she stated. I saw you eat 3 of them yesterday. I developed a sudden intolerance, Adrian said without looking up. Besides, growing boys need vitamins. I am fully grown, mostly horizontally. Fenra picked up his data slate. It was displaying a list of refugees in the Azure colony. Why are you memorizing this? She asked. I am not just memorizing it, Adrian said. I am checking the demographics. Look here, Unit 4B. The roster says adult male. But the consumption data shows a request for infant formula. Someone is hiding a baby. If we deliver standard rations, the baby starves. I need to make sure we offload the pediatric supplements first. Fenra looked at the list. Her finger traced a name. Jara Hawk. He was a miner on Titan. He lost his leg in the riots. Adrian looked at her in surprise. You know him. I know the Hawk clan, Fenra said softly. They petitioned for asylum 2 years ago. Rusk denied them. I could not overturn it then. I did not have the political capital. She looked at Adrian, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and shame. You feed the child you do not know. I remember the name of the man I failed. We are a pair of fools, aren't we? Better a fool than a monster, Adrian said. Fenra reached across the table. For a second he thought she was going to grab his hand. Instead, she tapped the scent collar at his throat. This is loose, she said abruptly. It needs adjustment. She stood up and leaned over him. Her fingers worked the mechanism at the back of his neck. She was close, dangerously close. He could feel the heat of her body through the armor. He could smell the ozone and pine overpowering and heady. For a moment, the bridge, the mission rusk, it all faded. There was just the tactile reality of her fingers on his skin. "There," she whispered, her breath tickling his ear. "Better." She pulled back, but she did not move away immediately. Their eyes met. The air between them crackled thick with unsaid things. "Your Majesty," Sable's voice cut through the air like a whip. They both snapped their heads toward the door. Sable stood there, her face a mask of stone. "Bridge report. We are entering the resonance zone. Dr. Imani's warnings were correct. The rift is reacting." Fenra cleared her throat, stepping back from Adrian. The mask of the Queen slammed back into place. "On my way," she said. She did not look at Adrian as she strode out. Sable lingered for a moment. She looked at Adrian, and her gaze was not hostile but warning. "She is not a woman, Adrian," Sable said quietly. "She is a sovereign. Do not forget the difference. For your sake and hers." The bridge was bathed in red emergency lighting. "Proximity alert," Kale shouted. "Gravity shear increasing. The rift is pulling us in." Outside, the universe had gone mad. The violet clouds of the Gloam Rift were no longer distant. They were swarming around the ship like angry hornets. Tendrils of energy lashed against the scent field, creating sparks of blinding white light. "Hold course," Fenra ordered, gripping the arms of her chair. "Reinforce the forward shields." "The resonance is spiking," Sable reported from the tactical station. "The rift is matching our shield frequency. It is trying to dissolve the barrier." And then it happened. Adrian was standing by the comm station when the sound hit him. It was not a sound he heard with his ears. It bypassed his auditory nerves and struck directly at the center of his brain. "Adrian." He gasped, clutching his head. The world tilted. "Key opener come." It was the howl. But it wasn't just a noise anymore. It was a voice. It was ancient, smooth, and terrifyingly familiar. It sounded like a memory of home that he had never had. "Adrian," Fenra's voice sounded miles away. "Adrian, what is wrong?" Adrian fell to his knees. The bridge dissolved. He was floating in a sea of purple fire. "Why do you struggle, little Key?" the voice purred in his mind. "The wolf binds you with metal. We bind you with truth. You want to save them. You want to save them all. Open the door. Let us in. We will feed them. We will heal them. We will make it right." It was the ultimate temptation. The power to fix everything. The power to end the hunger, the politics, the suffering. All he had to do was reach out mentally and align the ship's frequency with the rift. "No," Adrian gritted out, his teeth clenched. "No shortcuts. Stubborn," the voice laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh. It was an affectionate one. "We will wait." "Adrian!" A hand slapped his face, hard. The purple fire vanished. Adrian gasped, sucking in lungfuls of recycled air. He was on the deck of the bridge. Fenra was kneeling over him, her eyes wide with panic. She had slapped him. "Breathe," she commanded. "Look at me. What did you see?" "It spoke to me," Adrian whispered, shivering uncontrollably. "The rift. It called me the key." Fenra's face went pale beneath her fur. She looked up at the viewport. The turbulence outside had stopped. The rift had calmed down, as if it was waiting. "We are through," Kale announced, his voice shaky. "Clear of the anomaly. Approaching Azure Colony." Fenra helped Adrian to his feet. She kept her hand on his arm, her grip bruisingly tight. "We need to land," she said. "Now." The Azure Colony was a graveyard of ambition. Once a thriving mining outpost, it was now a collection of rusted domes and failing atmospheric generators. When the Moonfang touched down, there was no welcoming committee. There were only ghosts. People emerged from the airlock slowly. They were thin, their eyes hollow. They wore patched suits that had not been pressurized in years. Children hid behind the legs of their parents, staring at the massive black ship with fear. The cargo bay doors opened. The wolf crew began offloading the pallets of food and medicine. Fenra walked down the ramp, Adrian at her side. She had expected cheers. She had expected gratitude. She got silence. An old woman approached them. She held a bundle in her arms, a child, silent and unmoving. "Are you the queen?" the woman asked. Her voice was like dry leaves. "I am," Fenra said, standing tall. "I have brought supplies. Food. Medicine." "You are late," the woman said. She pulled back the blanket. The child was not asleep. The child was gone. "He died 2 days ago. We petitioned for aid 3 weeks ago. The automated reply said our request was pending optimization." Fenra froze. She looked at the small, still face. She looked at the crates of food being unloaded, food that was here finally, but useless to the dead. The symbol of the queen, the power, the majesty cracked. Fenra was not a monarch in that moment. She was just a person, standing in the dirt witnessing the absolute failure of her reign. She turned away, her shoulders shaking. Adrian watched her. He felt a surge of rage that was hotter than the rift. He looked at the optimized crates. He looked at the weeping woman. He felt like a fraud. He was the arbiter. He had fought the paperwork. He had won the battle, but he had lost the war. "I am sorry," Adrian said to the woman. It was a useless, pathetic string of words. "I am so sorry." He spent the next hour working. He carried crates. He set up the water filtration units. He worked until his muscles screamed and his hands bled, trying to exhaust the anger out of his system. He felt like he was putting a Band-Aid on a decapitation. Fenra was nowhere to be seen. He found her later, sitting on the edge of the landing pad, looking out at the barren landscape. She had taken off her armor. She looked small. "I did not know," she said when he approached. "I read the reports, I saw the numbers, but I did not know it looked like this." "That is the point of the system," Adrian said, sitting down beside her. "It turns tragedy into arithmetic. It keeps the blood off the carpet." "I am the queen," Fenra whispered. "It is all my carpet." She turned to him, her eyes fierce with tears she refused to shed. "How do you bear it? You see this every day in the files. How do you not burn the whole station down?" "I tried," Adrian said. "That is why I am here." Before Fenra could answer, her comms unit beeped. It was a priority channel. "Speak," she commanded, her voice thick. "My queen," Sable's voice came through urgent. "We have a problem. A message from Eidolon Spire. It is broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through." A hologram flickered to life in the air between them. It was Minister Rusk. He looked grave. He looked sorrowful. "Citizens of the Alliance," Rusk began. "It is with a heavy heart that I announce a betrayal. We have uncovered evidence that the so-called Royal Relief Arbiter, Adrian Locke, has been manipulating supply lines for personal gain." Adrian stared at the projection. What documents flashed on the screen, forged obviously, but perfect. Bank accounts in Adrian's name, showing massive deposits from black market traders. Logs, showing he had diverted the Moonfang not to save the colony, but to meet a smuggling rendezvous. "Adrian Locke is a predator disguised as a savior," Rusk continued. "The Council has issued a warrant for his immediate arrest. We demand that Queen Fenra surrender him to custody upon her return. If she does not, she will be considered an accomplice to treason." The hologram faded. Silence descended on the landing pad. Adrian felt the blood drain from his face. He planted it. He knew we were coming here. He used the time to build a frame. He looked at Fenra. "You know it is a lie. You know I did not take a credit." Fenra stood up. She looked at the ship. She looked at the colony. And then she looked at Adrian. She reached out and grabbed the front of his tunic, pulling him close. It wasn't a romantic gesture. It was an interrogation. "I know you did not take the money," Fenra said, her voice low and terrifying. "But tell me this, Adrian. That voice in the rift. The one only you could hear." Adrian froze. What about it? Rusk is a politician. He deals in lies. But the Rift deals in truth, Fenra said. When you fell on the bridge when you heard the call, did you answer it? No, Adrian said. I refused. Are you sure? Fenra asked. Her eyes searched his, looking for the reflection of the crimson script. Because Rusk's evidence is too perfect, and the Rift opened too easily for us. It feels like we are walking down a path that was paved for us. She let go of him, stepping back. The distance between them suddenly felt like a chasm. Are you sure, Adrian? She whispered, the wind whipping her hair around her face. That your decision to come here was yours? Or were you just the key turning in the lock because the hand turned you? Adrian opened his mouth to answer, but the words died. The doubt, cold and slippery, coiled in his gut. Was he the hero? Or was he just the Trojan horse? Adrian stammered. Get on the ship, Fenra commanded, her voice cold again. We are going back, and we are going to war. The interrogation room on the sublevel of Eidolon Spire was a study in sensory deprivation. The walls were a featureless, acoustic dampening white. The air was scrubbed so clean, it smelled of nothing. No ozone, no food, no life. It was a vacuum designed to suck the will out of a sentient being. Adrian Locke sat at a metal table that was bolted to the floor. His hands were not cuffed, but they might as well have been. Opposite him sat Envoy Rowan Hale, looking as though he was trying to shrink inside his expensive diplomatic suit. Standing in the corner, shrouded in the shadows where the light panels did not reach, was Minister Calder Rusk. Let us review the timeline again, Rusk said. His voice was calm, the voice of a man who was merely tidying up a messy room. On the 4th day of the month, a deposit of 50,000 credits was made to an account in the Cayman Nebula, registered to your biometric ID. 2 hours later, the Moonfang deviated from its approved course. I have never been to the Cayman Nebula, Adrian said, his voice hoarse. He had been in this room for 6 hours. I do not even have a bank account off station. My savings are in the station credit union. You can check. I am saving up for a refurbished hover chair. We know what the records say, Mr. Locke, Hale interjected nervously. He wiped sweat from his forehead with a silk handkerchief. But the minister has compelling digital footprints. Adrian, please. If you just admit that you were coerced by criminal elements, we can work something out. Extortion is a mitigating factor. We can protect you. Adrian looked at Hale. The man was trying to throw him a lifeline, but the lifeline was attached to an anchor. I was not coerced, Adrian said firmly. And I did not take any money. I diverted the ship because people were dying. Rusk stepped out of the shadows. He placed a data slate on the table. It does not matter what you believe you did, Rusk said coldly. The narrative is already written. The media outlets and the core systems are running the story as we speak. Corrupt official endangers relief fleet for profit. The narrative protects the integrity of the council. It isolates the infection to a single rogue individual. Rusk leaned in. Here is the offer, Locke. The clean solution. You sign a confession stating you accepted a bribe. In exchange, I will personally guarantee that the charges are reduced to administrative negligence. You will be stripped of your rank and the title of arbiter. You will be reassigned to a waste management facility in the Outer Rim. You will disappear. And in return, I will authorize the immediate release of 5 additional relief cruisers to the sector you tried to save. Adrian stared at the slate. It was a devil's bargain. Sacrifice his honor, his career, and his name to get the ships he wanted. It was the pragmatic choice. It was the choice the old Adrian, the tired logistics coordinator, might have taken. And if I refuse, Adrian asked. Then you go to the Void Prison, Rusk said simply. And the 5 ships remain in dock pending a security review that will take 6 months. The blood of those colonies will be on your hands, not mine. Adrian felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Rusk was weaponizing Adrian's own compassion against him. You are a monster, Adrian whispered. I am a gardener, Rusk corrected him, his eyes dead and flat. I pull weeds so the garden does not choke. The door to the interrogation room hissed open. It did not slide. It was forced. Warden Sable Marr stood in the doorway. She did not look at Rusk or Hale. She looked at Adrian. The Queen demands the presence of her arbiter, Sable announced. Her hand was resting on her sidearm. Now. He is in the middle of a federal inquiry, Rusk snapped. The inquiry is over, Sable said. Unless you wish to file a complaint with my plasma rifle. Rusk stared at her, calculating the odds. He was a man of logic. He knew that arguing with a wolf warden in a confined space was statistically unwise. Take him, Rusk said, picking up his data slate. He has until midnight to sign the confession. After that, the deal expires, and the ships stay grounded. Adrian expected to be taken back to the observation deck, or perhaps the bridge of the Moonfang. Instead, Sable led him deeper into the station to the Royal Suite, a section of Eidolon Spire that was legally considered sovereign soil of the wolf homeworld. The air here was thick with humidity and the scent of damp earth. The walls were covered in tapestries depicting the history of Fenra's clan. They entered the main chamber. Queen Fenra was pacing. She moved like a caged animal, her tail lashing back and forth, her claws clicking rhythmically on the stone floor. When she saw Adrian, she stopped. She crossed the room in 2 strides and grabbed his face in her hands. Her touch was rough, frantic. She tilted his head left and right, checking for bruises. Did they hurt you? She demanded. If Rusk touched you, I will burn his office to the ground. I am fine, Adrian said, though his heart was hammering. Just tired, and threatened. He offered me a deal, my life for 5 ships. Fenra let go of him and snarled. It was a visceral sound that vibrated in Adrian's chest. He tries to barter with me, with my people. I am not your people, Fenra, Adrian said quietly. Technically, I am a citizen of Earth currently under indictment for treason. Rusk has the legal high ground. Legality is a construct for those too weak to hold power, Fenra spat. She walked to the window, looking out at the stars. I have gone through the Wolf Law archives. There is a precedent. A way to stop this investigation instantly. A way to make you untouchable. She turned to face him. Her expression was grave. The Geist bond. Adrian blinked. What? The pact of the shared blood, Fenra explained. It is an ancient rite, usually reserved for bringing a mate or a sibling into the line of succession. But it can be used for a highly valued strategic asset. She took a breath. I can formally adopt you into the Greymaw Pack. Not as a servant, not as a guest, but as kin. The room went silent. Kin, Adrian repeated. You mean like a brother, like family, Fenra corrected. It involves a biological transfer, a retroviral injection of wolf genetic markers. It does not turn you into a wolf. You will not grow fur or a tail, but it changes your blood signature. It changes your scent. To the station sensors, to the council law, and to every wolf in the galaxy, you become Greymaw. You become royalty. Adrian stared at her. And the legal benefit. Under the Treaty of Orion, Fenra said, members of a royal house cannot be tried by a common council court. Any charge against you becomes a charge against the throne. Rusk would have to declare war on the entire Wolf Empire to prosecute you. Okay, Adrian said slowly. That sounds effective. What is the catch? Fenra looked away. The catch is the biology. The bond is not just paper, Adrian. It creates a neural resonance, a low-level telepathic link. You would feel my anger. I would feel your fear. We would never be truly alone in our heads again. She looked back at him, her golden eyes vulnerable. And it is permanent. There is no divorce in the pack. If you do this, you belong to the Greymaw line until your heart stops beating. You can never go back to being just Adrian Locke, the logistics coordinator. Adrian sank onto a heavy wooden bench. He put his head in his hands. Safety. Absolute protection. The power to tell Rusk to go to hell. But the cost, he would lose the last shred of his privacy. He would be chemically, biologically bound to an alien queen. He would be entering a marriage that was not a marriage, a brotherhood that was forced by politics. "I need air," Adrian choked out. "Go," Fenra said softly. "Sable is outside. Take 10 minutes. But Adrian, the deadline is midnight." Adrian stood in the corridor, leaning his forehead against the cool metal wall. Sable Mar stood a few feet away cleaning her fingernails with a vibro knife. "So," Adrian said, his voice muffled by the wall, "the Queen wants to genetically modify me." "It is a high honor," Sable said without looking up. "Most softskins would kill for the protection of the pack." "I am not most softskins," Adrian muttered. "I like my blood the way it is. I like my head being empty of other people's feelings." He turned to look at the warden. "I thought being a civil servant was enough of a commitment. You sign a contract, you get a pension. Now I am looking at a lifetime subscription to a biological hive mind." Sable paused. She sheathed her knife. "There is no cancel button on this package, Adrian," she said. "Once the virus is in. You become part of the collective instinct." "That is terrifying," Adrian said. "Is it?" Sable stepped closer. "Or are you just terrified that you might actually fit in somewhere? You have spent your whole life on this station, surrounded by millions of people, yet you eat dinner alone. You verify manifests for colonies you never visit. You are a ghost, Adrian. The bond would make you real." "It would make me a pet," Adrian argued. "No," Sable shook her head. "Fenra does not bond with pets. She bonds with equals. She is offering you half the weight of the crown. She is scared, Adrian. She needs someone to help her carry it. The question is not whether you want to be a wolf. The question is whether you care enough about her to stop her from breaking." Adrian looked at the closed door of the royal suite. He thought about Fenra's rage, her protectiveness. He thought about the way she had looked at him on the ship, not as a tool, but as a partner. He was afraid of losing himself. But as he stood there, he realized he was more afraid of watching Fenra fight this war alone. Before he could answer, his comms unit buzzed. It was a text message from Dr. Imani. "Locke, come to the lab. Now, do not bring the Queen." Dr. Imani's lab was a chaos of screens and wireframes. The xenophysicist looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Her eyes were manic. "Sit," she commanded, shoving Adrian onto a stool. "Where is the Queen?" "She is waiting for my answer on a proposal," Adrian said. "What is this about?" Dr. Imani brought up a holographic display. It showed the Howl signature, the jagged red script that Adrian had seen on the Moonfang. "I have been running decryption algorithms on the data we gathered from the rift," Imani said, talking fast. "I thought it was a communication signal, a language. I was wrong." She tapped the screen. The red script uncoiled, revealing complex mathematical structures underneath. "It is a command syntax," Imani whispered. "It is a neuro-linguistic virus. Ancient. Pre-alliance." "What does it do?" Adrian asked. "It optimizes," Imani said. "Just like Rusk's algorithms, but far more advanced. The rift isn't just a storm. It is a biological computer designed to manage resources on a galactic scale. And it has an agenda." She looked at Adrian, her face pale. "The Howl signature doesn't just talk to you, Adrian. It steers you. I tracked your neural patterns during the flight. When you decided to go to Azure Colony, your dopamine levels spiked 3 seconds before you made the conscious decision. The rift rewarded you for going there." Adrian felt sick. "You are saying I was brainwashed." "I am saying you were nudged," Imani corrected. "The rift wants the aid to flow. It wants the strongest colonies to survive. It identified you and Fenra as the most efficient delivery vectors. It is using your empathy as a fuel source." "And Fenra?" Adrian asked. She is more susceptible than you, Imani said grimly. Her biology, the wolf senses, makes her a perfect receiver. If she bonds with you, if you two link your minds, the combined signal strength might be enough for the rift to take total control. You wouldn't just be a queen and an arbiter. You would be avatars of an alien intelligence. The door slid open. Sable walked in. She had followed Adrian. Rusk knows, Sable said. Her voice was flat, devoid of its usual sarcasm. Adrian and Imani turned to her. What? Adrian asked. I ran a background check on Rusk, Sable said, stepping into the light. Deep dive, classified files from the Terran War. She threw a physical file onto the desk. Old paper, yellowed. 40 years ago, Station Delta 4. A supply blockade caused a famine. 3,000 dead. Rusk was a junior officer there. He watched his wife and daughter die of malnutrition because the local governor hoarded supplies for political leverage. Sable looked at Adrian. Rusk isn't doing this for money. He isn't doing it for power. He believes that unchecked emotion leads to chaos, and chaos leads to death. He thinks he is saving the galaxy from another Delta 4. He is traumatized, and he is radicalized. He thinks empathy is the enemy, Adrian realized, because empathy failed him. And now he has made his move, Sable said. Alerts are flashing across the security grid. Rusk has ordered a total lockdown of the scent preservation storage bays. He has cut the power to the stasis fields. Adrian stood up, knocking the stool over. The new shipment, the grain, the medicine, without the scent field. It will rot in 12 hours, Sable finished. He is holding the food hostage. He is going to let it spoil and blame it on your incompetence, unless you surrender. The royal suite was no longer a quiet room. It was a war room. Fenra stood by the holographic map of the station. She was fully armored now, the heavy plates of the Wolf Guard gleaming under the lights. Her helmet sat on the table. I will kill him, Fenra said calmly. It was not a threat. It was a statement of intent. I will take the Royal Guard. We will breach the storage bays. We will execute Rusk for crimes against the Alliance. If you do that, Adrian said, stepping into the room, you prove him right. You prove that we are chaotic, that we are dangerous. The Council will strip the wolves of their status. The Alliance will fracture. Let it fracture, Fenra roared, spinning on him. I will not let tons of food rot while he plays games. I will not let my people go hungry because of a rulebook. Fenra, listen to me, Adrian shouted back. He walked up to her, ignoring Sable's warning growl. He grabbed her shoulders. She was vibrating with rage, hot to the touch. Rusk wants a fight, Adrian said, looking into her golden eyes. He wants you to be the wolf. He wants you to bare your teeth so he can point a finger and say, look at the beast. Do not give him the monster he expects. Fenra trembled. Then what do we do? Surrender. Let you go to prison. No, Adrian said. We use the one weapon Rusk cannot block. We use the truth. He turned to the table. Dr. Imani told me something. The Echo Ledger, it connects everything. Not just supply lines. It connects screens, terminals, every datapad on the station. Rusk controls the feed, Fenra said. He controls the official feed, Adrian said. But the Howl signature, the red script, overrides the protocol. You showed me. When you touch it, the system changes. You want me to use the Rift's power? Fenra asked, horrified. Dr. Imani said it is a trap. It is a weapon, Adrian said. And right now, it is the only one we have. We do not use it to control people. We use it to turn on the lights. He took a breath. I need you to bond with me, Fenra. Fenra froze. What? Not for the legal protection, Adrian said. I need the neural link. Imani said 2 minds are stronger. If we link up, we can channel the signal. We can force the Echo Ledger to broadcast the live feed from the storage bays to every screen in the galaxy. We show them the food rotting. We show them Rusk's soldiers blocking the doors. We bypass the Council and Go straight to the people." "But the cost," Fenra whispered. "Adrian, if we do this, there is no going back. The virus, the biological change, you will be mine. I will be yours. Forever." Adrian looked at her. He saw the fear in her eyes. Not fear of Rusk, but fear of damning Adrian to a life he didn't choose. "I have spent my whole life being afraid of binding myself to anything," Adrian said softly. "I kept my head down. I ate dinner alone. I thought freedom was being unattached." He reached out and touched the scent collar at his throat. "But I was not free. I was just empty." He took her hand. Her claws were retracted, her skin rough and warm. "I am making a decision, Fenra. My decision. Not the Rift's. Not Rusk's. Mine. I choose the pack." Fenra stared at him. A tear, hot and silver, tracked down her cheek. "Sable," Fenra commanded, her voice thick. "Bring the ceremonial dagger. And the vial." The ritual was short, brutal, and devoid of pomp. Sable stood witness as Fenra cut her palm with the obsidian blade. She mixed her blood with a glowing blue serum in a silver chalice. "Drink," Fenra whispered. Adrian took the chalice. It smelled of iron and ozone. He looked at Fenra one last time. "To the pack," he said. He drank. The effect was instantaneous. Fire raced through his veins. His vision blurred, then sharpened to a terrifying degree. He could hear the hum of the station's reactor 3 decks down. He could smell the fear radiating off Sable, and the overwhelming crashing wave of love and terror radiating from Fenra. He gasped, dropping the chalice. "Adrian." The voice was not in his ears. It was in his soul. It was Fenra's voice, but it wasn't spoken. It was a thought, raw and unfiltered. "I can feel you," he thought back. "You are so loud," she responded, her mental voice amused and tearful. "Your mind is so cluttered with numbers." "Occupational hazard," he projected. They stood there, breathing in sync. The physical distance between them meant nothing now. He felt the weight of her armor as if he were wearing it. He felt the phantom pain of old scars on her back. "It is done," Sable said, her voice reverent. "Hail Lord Adrian, kin of the Greymaw." "Lord Adrian," Adrian tested the words. "Sounds expensive." "Focus," Fenra said aloud. Her eyes were glowing brighter now, the gold shifting to a deep, resonant amber. "The rift is singing to us, Adrian. Can you hear it?" Adrian closed his eyes. He could. It wasn't a terrifying howl anymore. It was a hum of power, waiting to be directed. "Let's go to the console," Adrian said. They walked to the crystalline terminal in the center of the room. This time, they did not hesitate. Fenra placed her right hand on the surface. Adrian placed his left hand over hers. Skin touched skin. Mind touched mind. "Open the eyes," Fenra commanded in the silence of their bond. "Break the lock," Adrian answered. The howl signature erupted. In the Grand Conclave, Minister Rusk was in the middle of a speech justifying the lockdown. "Security demands sacrifice," he was saying to the restless delegates. "We must ensure that—" Suddenly, the massive holographic display behind him flickered. The sector map vanished. In its place, a gritty, high-definition video feed appeared. It showed Sector 4 storage bay. It showed crates of grain beginning to gray with rot. It showed canisters of medicine hissing as their seals failed. And standing in front of the doors, weapons raised, were Rusk's own private security forces, blocking a group of desperate dock workers. The audio crackled to life. Not Rusk's voice, but Adrian's. "This is not security," Adrian's voice boomed through the chamber, echoing from every speaker, every datapad, every personal comms unit on the station. "This is murder by bureaucracy." Then Fenra's voice joined him, harmonizing in a way that made the alien delegates shudder. "The Greymaw line declares this blockade illegal. We are opening the doors. Any soldier who fires on a relief worker declares war on the Wolf Empire." The feed switched. It showed the heavy blast doors of the storage bay grinding open. The Moonfang's crew, led by Kale, pushed past the stunned security guards. They began moving the supplies. Rusk stared at the screen. His face was gray. He tapped his podium, trying to cut the feed. "Turn it off," he screamed. "Override. Access denied." The screen flashed. "System controlled by royal prerogative." The delegates stood up. The shouting began. It wasn't polite anymore. The Silica Lords were chiming in fury. The Jovian ambassadors were banging their tanks. Rusk looked out at the sea of faces. He saw his carefully constructed order crumbling. He saw the thing he feared most, the mob driven by emotion turning on him. Back in the royal suite, Adrian pulled his hand away from the console. He collapsed into a chair, his head spinning. The connection broke, but the background hum remained a permanent tether to Fenra. Fenra leaned against the desk panting. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were triumphant. "We did it," she whispered. "Rusk is finished. The council will eat him alive." "We saved the grain," Adrian said, rubbing his temples. "And we saved the fleet." Fenra walked over to him. She stood between his knees, looking down at him. She reached out and touched his cheek. "You saved me," she said. "If you had not stopped me, I would have used blood. You used light." "Light is harder to clean up," Adrian joked weakly. Fenra did not smile. She leaned down, her forehead resting against his. "Do not think this is over, my kin," she whispered. Her voice was rough, like wind over snow. "We beat Rusk. But when we touched the system, when we opened the feed, I felt it." "Felt what?" Adrian asked. "The rift," Fenra said. "It did not just let us use the signal, Adrian. It pushed back. It tasted us." She pulled back, looking into his eyes with a terrifying intensity. Rusk was just the gatekeeper. The thing inside the rift, the thing that writes the red script, it knows we are here now. It knows we are bonded. And it is hungry. Adrian felt a cold shiver go through his new wolf-enhanced blood. "So, what do we do?" Fenra drew her sidearm and checked the charge. "Now," she said, "we go hunting." The chaos in the Grand Conclave chamber had transcended politics and entered the realm of a riot. The holographic projection of the rotting grain in Sector 4 was still playing a 50-foot loop of administrative failure, hovering over the heads of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Adrian Locke stood on the central podium, his hand still gripping the console, his mind humming with the residual static of the Geist bond. Beside him, Queen Fenra Greymaw was a statue of armed fury, her hand resting on the pommel of her sidearm. Minister Calder Rusk did not run. He did not shout. He stood on his floating platform, watching the angry gestures of the Silica Lords and the furious bubbling of the Jovian ambassadors, with the detached interest of a man watching a dam burst. "You have seen the truth," Adrian shouted, his voice amplified to drown out the noise. "We are not just talking about Sector 4. We are opening the whole book." Adrian slammed his hand onto the console again. Through the neural link, he pushed a command that felt like shoving a boulder downhill. "Open it all." The hologram changed. The single video feed dissolved into thousands of data streams. The Echo Ledger, the holy book of the Alliance's logistics, unspooled like a spilled intestine. Red lines, the ghost traces of denied aid, of rerouted medical supplies, of colonies left to die for the sake of optimization, filled the air. It was a galaxy of red scars. "Look at it," Fenra commanded, her voice harmonizing with the growl of the Wolf Guard. 10 years of silence, 10 years of murder by spreadsheet. Every red line is a graveyard. The room fell silent. The sheer scale of the negligence was undeniable. It was not an error. It was architecture. Rusk slowly walked to the edge of his platform. He looked down at Adrian, and for the first time, his expression was not one of arrogance, but of exhausted pity. "You are a child playing with a fusion reactor," Rusk said. His voice was not amplified, but in the sudden silence it carried perfectly. "I am showing them the reactor you let melt down," Adrian shot back. "No," Rusk said. You are showing them the containment wall. Rusk tapped his own wrist comp. The lighting in the chamber dimmed. A new hologram appeared above his head, not a spreadsheet but a waveform. It was jagged, violent, and purple. "You think I starve these colonies for profit?" Rusk asked, his voice rising. "You think I enjoy the death counts? I do it because I remember what happened the last time we let the scent of pure altruism touch the rift." Rusk gestured to the purple waveform. 30 years ago, the colony of St. Jude. We tried it your way, Locke. We sent everything. We saturated the sector with aid, with hope, with the Wolf Queen's scent technology to preserve the food. And the rift woke up. A murmur of confusion went through the delegates. "The rift is not a weather phenomenon," Rusk declared. "It is a psychic mirror. If you feed it enough positive resonance, enough goodness, it tries to maximize it. It tries to fix us." Dr. Imani's voice cut through the comms channel, broadcasting from her lab directly into the chamber. "He is telling the truth," the doctor said, her voice trembling. "My sensors are peaking. The Howl signature is not just a virus. It is an invitation. The rift is an ancient biosystem designed to enforce harmony. If it resonates fully with the wolf bloodline and a moral catalyst like Adrian, it will not just deliver food. It will rewrite the neural pathways of every sentient being in range. It will force them to be peaceful." Rusk nodded grimly. "Peace at the cost of free will. A hive mind of forced charity. St. Jude didn't die of hunger, Arbiter. They died because they forgot to eat, forgot to sleep, forgot to be individuals. They just stood in the fields smiling until they dropped. I built the conditional aid protocol to keep the empathy levels low, to keep the rift dormant. I am not the monster. I am the cage." The revelation hit the room like a physical blow. Adrian felt his knees buckle. The howl in his head, the sweet, compelling voice, suddenly sounded less like a song and more like a command. "Adrian," the voice purred. "He lies. He wants pain. We offer silence. We offer the end of wanting." "It is listening," Adrian whispered to Fenra. "Rusk is right. It is feeding on us right now." "I do not care about ancient ghosts," Fenra shouted, her voice cutting through the metaphysical dread. "I care about the living Rusk has locked the storage bays. The rift might eat our minds tomorrow, but starvation will kill those people today." She turned to the wolf guard stationed on the upper ring. "Warden Marr," Fenra barked. "The storage bays are sealed by council override. The grain is rotting. What is the duty of the pack?" Sable Marr stood on the ledge. She looked at Rusk, then at Adrian, and finally at her queen. She drew her shock baton. "The pack feeds the weak," Sable stated. She turned to her squad. "Security Team Alpha, you are relieved of council command. We answer to the throne. Breaching charges on the storage doors. Move." "This is treason," Rusk screamed, losing his composure at last. "If you open those doors, the surge of relief, the emotional spike will trigger the convergence. You will doom us all." "Then we will have full bellies when we die," Fenris snarled. She grabbed Adrian's arm. "Come. We are going to the source." "Where?" Adrian asked, stumbling as she pulled him. "My cabin," Fenris said. "The desk. The core of the ship's interface. That is where the howl is strongest. If Rusk is right, we have to shut it down manually. If he is wrong, we have to kill him." The run to the royal suite was a blur of flashing red lights and blaring sirens. The station was in chaos. On the monitors, Adrian could see Sable's forces clashing with Rusk's automated drones at the storage bay. When they burst into Fenra's cabin, the room was unrecognizable. The hunting maps were gone, the furniture was rattled, the air was freezing cold, and the window looking out at the Gloam Rift was vibrating. The rift outside was boiling no longer purple, but a blinding, searing white. And on the obsidian desk, the holographic emitter had shattered. In its place, floating in midair, was the source of the Howl signature. It was a crystal shard, jagged and pulsating, suspended in a field of pure resonance. It looked like a heart made of frozen starlight. "What is that?" Adrian asked, the breath misting in front of his face. "The first shard," Fenra whispered. "An heirloom of the Greymaw. I thought it was just a symbol. I did not know it was a receiver." They approached the desk. The sound in Adrian's head became a roar. It wasn't painful. It was ecstatic. It felt like the moment right before a first kiss, magnified by a billion. Key the Rift sang, "Queen, you are here. The gate is open." Adrian felt a wave of euphoria. He saw a vision of the galaxy. No wars, no hunger, no lonely dinners in empty mess halls. Just a golden light connecting every mind, a perfect, seamless unity. "It is beautiful," Adrian murmured, his eyes losing focus. "Adrian!" Fenra grabbed his shoulders. Her claws dug into his skin, sharp enough to draw a drop of blood. The pain anchored him. "Look at me, not at the light." Adrian blinked, the vision fracturing. He looked at Fenra. She was terrified. "It wants to help," Adrian said, his voice thick. "Fenra, it can fix everything. It can force Rusk to be kind. It can make the pirates lay down their guns." "And what happens to us?" Fenra asked, her voice cracking. "If we are forced to be kind, are we still us?" She pulled him closer until their foreheads touched. The Geist bond flared, and he felt her soul, a messy, jagged, beautiful storm of pride, fear, anger, and love. "I can order you, Adrian," Fenra whispered. "I am your queen. I am your alpha. I could use the bond to force you to smash that crystal. I could make you obey." Adrian looked into her golden eyes. He felt the immense power she held over him, the biological imperative to submit to the pack leader. But she wasn't using it. She was holding it back, trembling with the effort. "I know," Adrian whispered. "But I will not," Fenra said, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "Because a loyal subject who has no choice is just a slave, and a lover who has no choice is just a prisoner." She let go of him, stepping back. She gestured to the floating crystal heart. "You are the arbiter, Adrian Locke. You are the one who weighs the cost. Choose." Adrian looked at the crystal. On one hand, utopia. A world where no child starved, guaranteed by an alien god. But a world where Fenra's fire would be extinguished, replaced by a warm, dull glow. A world where he would love her because the universe told him to not, because he fell for the way she snarled at bureaucracy. On the other hand, the mess, the pain, the fighting, Rusk, the rot, the risk that they might fail and people might die. He thought about the impossible deal Fenra had offered him at the start. She hadn't asked for a servant. She had asked for someone to tell her the truth. "The rift offers perfection," Adrian said to the empty air. "Yes," the voice purred. "Perfection." "I hate perfection," Adrian said. "Perfection doesn't have any jokes. And it definitely doesn't have any spicy noodles." He reached out. "Stop, the rift," screamed the voice, turning from sweet to demonic. "You choose pain. You choose chaos." "I choose the right to be wrong," Adrian yelled. He grabbed the crystal shard with his bare hand. It burned. It felt like grabbing a handful of liquid nitrogen. The cold seared his nerves. The howl screamed in his mind, a cacophony of 1,000 rejected gods. "Fenra now!" Adrian shouted. Fenra didn't hesitate. She drew her sidearm, a heavy kinetic blaster, and aimed not at Rusk, not at a soldier, but at the heart of her own legacy. "For the pack!" she roared. She pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt hit the crystal in Adrian's hand. There was no explosion. There was a sound like a grand piano being dropped from orbit, a discord that shattered the air. The white light of the rift collapsed. The crystal disintegrated into diamond dust. Adrian was thrown backward, hitting the floor hard. The song in his head cut off instantly, leaving a silence so loud it rang. Outside the window, the gloam rift shuddered. The white boil faded, returning to the bruised, sullen purple of a natural storm. It was just a spatial anomaly again. The intelligence was gone. Adrian lay on the floor, gasping. His hand was burned, smoking slightly. Fenra was there in an instant, cradling his head in her lap. "You idiot!" she sobbed, laughing and crying at the same time. "You reckless, soft-skinned idiot. You could have vaporized your arm." "Did it work?" Adrian wheezed. "Is the world still terrible?" Fenra looked out the window. "Yes, it looks beautifully broken." The fallout was messy, loud, and entirely human. Without the threat of the rift's awakening, Rusk had no leverage. But he also had no defense. Sable Mar and her team had breached the storage bays. The feed of the grain being distributed was playing on every screen. The crisis Rusk had manufactured to justify his control had evaporated the moment the food touched the hands of the hungry. When Adrian and Fenra returned to the conclave chamber, the mood had shifted. It wasn't a riot anymore. It was a tribunal. Rusk sat on the edge of his platform. He looked smaller, older. He did not fight when the station security alliance guards, not wolves, moved in to detain him. He looked up as Adrian approached. Adrian's hand was bandaged, glowing with regenerative gel. "You stopped it," Rusk said. He sounded genuinely baffled. "You had the power of a god in your hand and you broke it." "I am a logistics coordinator, Minister," Adrian said, leaning heavily on Fenra. "I know that if something sounds too good to be true, it is usually a scam." Rusk shook his head. "I was trying to save them from themselves. Without the rift to guide them, without strict control, they will go back to being greedy. They will hoard. They will kill. History will repeat itself." He looked at Adrian with a piercing, desperate intensity. "How can you be sure they will do the right thing if you do not force them? How do you know?" Adrian looked around the room. He saw the delegates arguing, but this time they were arguing about how many ships to pledge to the relief effort. He saw Sable laughing with a human guard. He saw Rowan Hale frantically trying to donate his personal yacht to the cause to save face. "I don't know," Adrian said honestly. "I cannot be sure. That is the point. We have to wake up every day and choose not to be monsters. Some days we will fail, but at least it will be our failure." Rusk slumped. The logic of his life had been dismantled, not by a sword, but by a choice. "Take him away," Fenra commanded. 3 days later. The station was still buzzing, but the panic had subsided into a frantic productivity. The Moonfang was being refitted for another run. Adrian sat in Fenra's cabin. The desk was empty now, save for a fresh pot of coffee, real coffee smuggled in by Sable, and a stack of very boring, very comforting requisition forms. Fenra stood by the window. The rift was quiet. "Does it hurt?" she asked, not turning around. "The hand. Or the fact that I am now officially a member of a royal family and have to attend etiquette classes?" Adrian asked, signing a form. "The hand, Adrian." "It throbs a bit," Adrian admitted. "But the medbots say I will keep the fingers." Fenra turned. She walked over to him and sat on the edge of the desk. She looked different, lighter. The weight of the crown seemed to have eased, shared now, by the man sitting in the chair. "I lied to you," she said softly. Adrian put down his pen. "About the etiquette classes. Please say yes." "About why I summoned you that first night," Fenra said. She reached out and traced the line of his jaw. "I told you it was because of the ledger. Because I was angry at the theft." "I remember," Adrian said. "You were very scary. It was impressive." "I was not angry, Adrian," Fenra confessed. "I was terrified." She took his bandaged hand in hers, holding it with infinite gentleness. "My family, the Greymaw line, we have guarded the rift for generations because we are susceptible to it. The howl calls to us. It tries to use us to open the door. For years I felt it scratching at the back of my mind, waiting for me to break." She looked into his eyes. "Then I saw your file. I saw your history. A human who refused to follow the logic of the system. Someone who had a moral resonance, so stubborn, so irritatingly fixed, that it created static on the echo ledger." Adrian blinked. "I was static. You were an anchor, Fenra said. I summoned you because I knew the rift was waking up. I knew that if I faced it alone, I would surrender to it. I needed someone who could stand next to a god and say no. So I was a shield, Adrian said, feeling a strange mix of pride and hurt. A tool. At first, Fenra admitted. I told myself you were just a living key. That is why I kept you close. That is why I offered you the job. I was afraid that if I let you go, Rusk would kill you, and I would be left alone in the dark with that voice. She leaned closer, her scent wrapping around him pine snow, and something sweet like amber. But then, you made a joke about chicken while facing execution. Then you taught me how to laugh at the void. And when I offered you the bond, when I gave you the impossible deal, it was not to save the galaxy. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I realized I did not want to save the world if you were not in it. The deal was impossible because I was asking you to give up your freedom to save my soul. And you did it. Adrian looked at her. He saw the woman beneath the crown. He saw the loneliness she had carried for 100 years. Well, Adrian said, a slow smile spreading across his face. I suppose it is a fair trade. You got a soul. I got access to the executive bathroom. Fenra laughed a bright, clear sound that chased the last shadows from the room. You are insufferable, Adrian Locke. I am kin, Adrian corrected her. And I believe, according to Wolf law, the queen is required to buy dinner for her kin after a successful hunt. Is that so? Fenra raised an eyebrow. And what does the arbiter desire? Something real, Adrian said, standing up and pulling her close. No synthetic paste, no magical crystals, just dinner. Fenra rested her head on his shoulder. The connection between them, the Geist bond, hummed no longer a shout, but a steady, warm rhythm. Two hearts beating in a syncopated jazz of survival. I think, Fenra whispered, we can arrange that. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright, indifferent to the tiny dramas of organic life. But in the cabin facing the vast dark, there was warmth. And for the first time in a long time, the silence was not waiting for anything. It was just peace.